Number 10. Iron Man. I mean, Tony is just a man, but he is still a very determined man, and he's willing to put everything on the line when it comes to saving the day or fighting for what he believes in. A few examples of this can be seen from both the comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man ends up being the one to wear the Infinity Gauntlet, snapping to defeat Thanos as the heroes make their final stand. He knows he won't survive this, but it's up to him in the end to save the day, and he's willing to give his life to stop Thanos and prevent him from once more erasing 50% of the universe's population with a snap. During Civil War in the comics, Iron Man also exhibits how committed he can be to a cause, when he believes the best way to prevent civilian casualties is by basically reining in superheroes, having them register and in essence work for the government. His beliefs are so strong that while other heroes disagree with his methods, he is willing to go to war over it, starting the first civil war against the superheroes that disagree, who are led by a man who believes in freedom among all else and knows all too well what it's like to be a government pawn. Captain America's Steven Rogers. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we're doing here at Top 10 Nerd and you need more Marvel content in your life, be sure to check out our Top 10 Marvel playlist for that. Number 9. Doctor Strange. Even when Doctor Strange died, he didn't let that defeat him. In Death of Doctor Strange, Strange comes back to investigate his own death and solve his own murder. Well, a version of him does anyways. And the amazing thing is that he also seems to have left clues for his alternate self to solve the murder. In the end, when Clea attempts to call him back before accepting the role of Sorcerer Supreme as Doctor Strange's wife, Strange, however, says he cannot return because he knows what it will cost, and that it breaks basically laws of magic. Despite the fact that Strange is a hero who gets things done, he has also learned how to be unstoppably loyal to the rules of magic. This is probably because he is known to have broken these rules on a few occasions to varying degrees of success, I'd say. Sometimes it works, other times doing so only creates more problems, as we also see in Doctor Strange's journey in regards to his MCU stories and counterparts. In the MCU, Strange was willing to break some rules to help Peter get into school by making the world forget that he was actually Spider-Man. But due to Peter's constant add-ons in regards to who was actually allowed to remember, Strange lost control of that spell, splitting a crack in the multiverse. But alternatively, when facing off against the Scarlet Witch, he did allow himself to use an alternate copy of the Darkhold to dreamwalk in his own alternate universe's corpse, breaking several rules in order to defeat Wanda. Then again, he probably knew, like, this is like, I gotta break some rules here. I'm hoping it'll all work out in the end. I mean, I think Strange knew, like, I could do this and it'll be worth it. Number 8. Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers' whole motto is basically about being unstoppable. Higher, further, faster, baby. Well, it's about being unstoppable and of course, flying. Carol loves to fly. Even when an alternate version of her shows up on God Emperor Doom's battle world during Secret Wars, where she is given a life that she should seemingly love, this version of Carol becomes suspicious of Doom and ends up rebelling, questioning if what he tells her about the sky is actually true. This lines up perfectly with the type of hero Carol is in the main reality as well. During Secret Wars, the Captain Marvel of Earth 616 was one of the heroes on the life raft who had been preserved to the end of the multiverse and rebelled as well against Doom to try and reset the multiverse back to normal, which happens after Reed gets control of the Beyonders' powers, winning them back in a battle against Doom and using them along with the help from his family to rebuild the Marvel multiverse. Aside from that, Carol in the main continuity has also lost her memories multiple times and even died and been resurrected, and she hasn't ever let any of that stop her from doing what needs to be done in terms of heroics. Captain Marvel also happens to be one of the most powerful superheroes out there in Marvel Comics. She's got a ton of combat experience, military experience, pilot experience, and can survive in the vacuum of space. Number 7. Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel is one of the Superman-like characters that Marvel has to offer us. In fact, I would argue of the characters that we have in that category that are like DC Superman, he is one of the most underrated and often understated for how powerful he truly is. Adam Brashear, as he is known, is actually powered by antimatter, in essence becoming a living, breathing antimatter or negative reactor. The antimatter that he harnesses comes from the negative zone, which is why we might refer to him as a negative reactor as an alternate to an antimatter reactor. But he isn't a negative character, just the opposite. He is an amazingly powerful positive character, a superhero. Blue Marvel got his powers way back in the day and has actually been an active hero since the 60s in terms of the comics inner timeline. However, he didn't end up staying as one throughout his history due to the fact that he was black, with President John F. Kennedy heartbreakingly even asking him to retire from heroics because tensions were running high and America just wasn't ready for a black superhero at that time. Fortunately, they're ready now. Which is also great because we need a hero like Blue Marvel who isn't just unstoppable because of his nigh invulnerability, strength, and ability to manipulate energy, but also because he happens to be a super genius as well. And while some might take his temporary retirement as Blue Marvel giving up, really he was more just biding his time. A decade later he would once again return to heroics, joining the mighty Avengers of the 1970s, so he also wasn't out for really that long, fortunately. Number 6. Namor. While some might have more power than Namor behind their mighty fists, I would argue that Namor tends to be even more stubborn and determined a lot of the time. He isn't one to back down, and generally a good speech doesn't really cut it for making him stop whatever it is he's doing. Although he also probably wouldn't attack mutant kind since, you know, he is a mutant. But then again, if mutant kind did something to harm Atlantis, he might. Namor is a mutant, but first and foremost he is a ruler, believing in fighting for his people and their underwater nation. Case in point, when Krakoa first emerged and he was actually approached to join and acknowledge the country, but he decided to reject their offer to join the nation as a mutant. Although I imagine Atlantis would still recognize Krakoa, but I can't remember for certain if that's been mentioned in anything that I've read. Let me know in the comments if you know if Atlantis has acknowledged Krakoa yet. Namor is also in his own right a powerhouse, and while he might not be as well known for his strength as someone say like the Hulk, he also has shared a place on the Defenders team, with him proving how undeniably powerful he is to have earned that place. In fact, the Defenders remains one of the most powerful teams at Marvel, so typically anyone who makes the cut should be considered pretty OP.
At number 5 is Stingray from Marvel. Stingray is a Marvel Comics superhero, but he's a bit like the unsung hero of the deep blue sea. Picture an oceanographer turned tech genius with a vision to create a utopian underwater city. Ever heard of Rapture? That's Walter Newell for you. He whipped up a slick suit that lets him explore the ocean's depths, and voila, Stingray was born. Now you might not have heard much about him because he often plays the role of a supporting character. He's actually teamed up with heavy hitters like Namor, the Avengers, and the 50 State Initiative. But here's the kicker. Despite being around for half a century, he's only shown up in fewer than 200 comics. It's like having a superstar status, but hanging out backstage. If Stingray ever made a splash in the MCU, he could definitely be the oceanic hero we never knew we needed. At number 4 is Ultra the Multi-Alien. Ultra the Multi-Alien is an obscure gem from DC Comics. Imagine you're just a regular space traveler minding your business, and then suddenly you crash land on a planet with 4 wannabe conquerors who blast you with transformation ray guns simultaneously. What do you get? Well, not your average superhero, that's for sure. One leg turns into lightning, the other grows feathers and talons. One arm becomes magnetic, and the other becomes super strong with green fur. It's like a mashup of superpowers, and the best part, he could revert to his original form with a nifty device. So Ace Arn decides to become a superhero and takes the stage in Mystery in Space. A quirky hero with unique super set, Ultra deserves a little more love among the comic book greats. At number 3 is 3D Man. Ever heard of 3D Man? No? Well, you're not alone. But this Marvel character has a history dating back to 1977. Chuck Chandler, a test pilot, was once kidnapped by Skrulls, those shape-shifting alien baddies. But Chuck didn't take it lying down. He sabotaged their spacecraft and made a run for it. And that's where it gets interesting. See, as Chuck fled, he vanished into a burst of light where the Skrull ship exploded. But that's not the end of his story. His brother Hal saw something truly bizarre. See, Chuck's essence got imprinted on Hal's eyeglasses, turning Chuck into a two-dimensional being. When Hal focused, he could release Chuck, and they'd merge into a superhuman powerhouse with triple the strength, speed, and stamina of your average Joe. Now, 3D Man might not be on everyone's radar, but the legacy lives on through a character named Triathlon, who even joined the Avengers. So some obscure superheroes are hiding out there in a Marvel universe, sometimes hiding in plain sight. At number 2 is 2 Pew Pew Kid from Marvel. Ever hear of the 2 Kid? The 2 Pew Pew Kid? No, well, you're not alone. This unsung Marvel hero might not be as flashy as Iron Man or as powerful as Thor, but he's got a unique charm of his own. Matt Hawks started his life as a Harvard lawyer in the 1800s, but destiny took him to a small town where he trained under a legendary slinger. When he was all trained up, he donned the iconic cowboy hat and became the infamous cowboy, making his debut in 1962. What sets him apart is his time-traveling escapades, though. He's been zipping back and forth between the past and the present, even at one point lending a hand to the Avengers. Despite his long history, he's been overshadowed by the big names, with his appearances being sporadic outside the 70s. But don't underestimate the Pew Pew Kid, because he's one of Marvel's unsung heroes. At number 1 is Bullet Man and Bullet Girl from Fawcett Comics. Have you ever heard of Bullet Man and Bullet Girl? I hope not, then I would have failed. But these two are some of the most underrated superheroes in the comic book universe. Jim Barr, a former forensic scientist, concocted a serum intended to rid people of their criminal tendencies. However, when he tested it on himself, he found himself supercharged with enhanced strength and intellect. Just like that, he became Bullet Man. Sporting a nifty gravity-regulating helmet, Bullet Man could soar through the skies. And not to be outdone, his girlfriend, and later wife, Suzanne Kent, donned a costume of her own, joining the ranks as Bullet Girls. These two lovebirds fought crime together, and their adventure started back in 1940, but sadly they disappeared a decade later. DC Comics later breathed new life into these heroes by licensing them in the 70s. They all became a part of the Marvel family, the All-Star Squadron, and the Seven Soldiers of Victory, cementing their place in the superhero pantheon. So the next time you're chatting about superheroes, don't forget to mention Bullet Man and Bullet Girl, because they might not be the most famous, but they definitely are super.
Number 10, Swordsman. When the world's heroes gave up their lives in order to destroy the villain Onslaught, what they didn't know is that Franklin Richards had subconsciously created a pocket universe to save everyone. No one knew of this, and they spent an entire year on this counter-Earth reliving their new lives as heroes reborn, because that was the name of the comic. One of these heroes that seemed to be native to this pocket universe was a guy by the name of Swordsman. Swordsman was a member of the Avengers, and he was with them in their fights with Loki, Kang, and the Hulk, and eventually he became the last Avenger when the other Avengers went back to Earth 616. Now sadly, Swordsman ended up getting cancer, and in an effort to keep the world safe, he created a new team of heroes called the Remnants, leading them under his new name, Deadpool. Unfortunately, he had to retire from superheroing because of the cancer, but then, in a sudden twist, Deadpool/Swordsman learns that his entire reality and everyone in it is actually just the fabrication of a young boy named Franklin, and he goes absolutely mad and wants to destroy the entire dimension. He steals a SHIELD helicarrier filled with nuclear boom booms, and then launches all of them at the Watcher's Citadel on the moon, riding one of them along the way. Turns out he actually creates a tear in space and time and meets an evil core of Deadpool's, and he joins up. Number 9, Kidpool. I am putting Kidpool on this list for pretty much one reason. 2 words: lightsabers. Technically, it's 1 word, just let me live. Anyone who wields a lightsaber is automatically just better, okay? And when that person is a pre-puberty Wade Wilson, and he wields not just 1, but 2 lightsabers, is beautiful. Hailing from Earth 10330, Wade Wilson was a new student of the Xavier Orphanage for Troubled Boys, and he really was a troubled boy. Unfortunately, this means he was a little bit of a loner. He got put in detention with a kid version of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and so Wade and Scott decided to team up and escape from detention and go crash the prom so Scott could be with Jean Grey. At the prom, Wade ended up getting into a battle of fisticuffs with the kid-sized version of Logan, aka Wolverine, and the fight made the prom come to a halt and saw Kidpool get embarrassed in front of all the other kids. So he decided to leave, but just when that happened, he was confronted by 616 Deadpool and joined up with his good guy Deadpool core. Number 8, Hulkpool. Hulked Out Heroes is a nice, sweet little 2-issue comic that is honestly just the best. Basically, MODOK and the leader had gamma mutated a few pretty powerful heroes like Thor and the Thing and Wolverine and a whole bunch of them, and that on its own is dope. But they also gamma mutated Deadpool so that he is now Hulkpool, and he and Bob decide to head off to do their own thing. They head to Thunder's base and use her time machinery, and Bob sends Hulkpool back through time with the intention of crushing his normal weak Deadpool self. Because, I don't know, I guess paradoxes don't exist here. Instead, Bob accidentally sends Hulkpool on a trip through time, starting in 1717 on board a pirate ship where Ben Grimm, the Thing, has taken on the role of Blackbeard. Hulkpool joins him as his first mate, and they face off against a giant squid until Bob sends them back even further and they come face to face with Devil Dinosaur. After that whole chaotic journey, all 3 of them are time displaced to the Wild West where, of all people, they run into Hawkeye. Hulkpool travels again, but this time he ends up at the exact moment when Captain America and Bucky Barnes are in the process of completing the mission where Bucky tragically passes away, quote unquote, because we know what actually happens. And Hulkpool stops the whole thing from happening in the first place. Not only that, but he helps Cap take down the Red Skull and Germany's leader in one go. Not bad. He stops Matt Murdock from getting covered in toxic waste, Doctor Strange from getting in his car crash, the Fantastic Four from going to space, Donald Blake from becoming Thor, Peter Parker from being bit by a spider, Tony Stark from being taken hostage, and Bruce Banner from being gamma irradiated. All before he finally faces himself from the day before, only to find out that he's created a whole new timeline and that pirate Ben Grimm became the first president of the United States, and Bob is hailed as a god. Number 7. Venompool. Venompool hails from Earth 90211 from a reality stuck in the 1980s. In the story, the Beyonder decided to live the life of the party, and Spider-Man is still bonded with the Venom symbiote. Well, when Deadpool is hired by Galactus to kill the Beyonder, Deadpool tracked down his target to a nightclub, but found he was enticed into the Beyonder's partying lifestyle, getting Jerry curls in the process. While hanging out with the Beyonder in a flying limousine, because of course, Spider-Man breaks into the car out of nowhere and demands Beyonder remove the symbiote costume from him. In a freak moment, Spider-Man is attacked by the limo driver, and the symbiote ends up bonding with Deadpool instead. After a while, the Beyonder got sick of the Deadpool/symbiote amalgamation and ditches him, which you can imagine didn't sit very well with Venompool. He ends up going back to his mission and tries to bring down the Beyonder with a weapon called the Recton Expungifier. There's a lot to this story, but I don't want to rob you the satisfaction of reading it yourself, so we're moving on. Number 6. Gwenpool. Gwenpool came from a universe a lot like ours, meaning superheroes were all fictional characters in her world with origins and stories printed in comic books. Well, Gwen was obsessed with them. Thanks to a series of events, when she wound up in the Marvel universe, she put on a costume and became a mercenary as Gwenpool. Gwen is a regular human, but she knew all this was fictional inside a comic book, which allows her to completely break the fourth wall, which has helped her snag victories on multiple occasions, not to mention the fact that she knows everything about pretty much every hero. Her knowledge that everything is in a comic book also allows her to completely detach from anyone she is hired to take down, making her a pretty effective merc. Despite that, Gwen has grown to care for the people that inhabit her adopted universe, though she continues to believe that she is a fictional character in a comic book. Gwen's chief enemy is MODOK, the mental organism designed only for killing. Gwen was part of MODOK's mercenary group for a short time until the boss realized that Gwen possessed no actual skills at all, making him pretty peed off. Gwenpool is awesome, and she has the ability to bring people into the space between comic panels, which is just a level of meta that I'm not ready for right now. Number 5. Reed Richards. Okay, so in the Ultimate Universe, Reed Richards was a brilliant scientist and leader of the Fantastic Four, as he is in the 616 continuity as well. But we do have to acknowledge something. This Reed does not stay a superhero for very long. In fact, he becomes one of the greatest villains in the Marvel multiverse. When Magneto unleashed the ultimatum wave on New York, his son passed away, and Sue Storm rejected his marriage proposal, Reed started to go a little bonkers. He blew up his family home along with his parents and faked his own de-lifing. He then planned attacks on some major buildings and Peter Parker's home. Eventually, becoming one of the most sinister villains in the Ultimate Universe, the heroes found him, beat him up, and Johnny Storm disfigured him. And then they left him floating in the negative zone. Reed then decided that maybe, you know what, this Earth kinda sucks. So he elongated his brain, spent 1,000 years in the distant future creating genetic superhumans, and started calling himself the Maker. Reed returned to Earth and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect, quote unquote. He took out all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used antimatter to attack Washington. The Maker went on to do a lot of incredibly twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth, but eventually the heroes of Earth 616 as well, after the destruction of his own universe. Number 4. Captain America. In the Ultimate Universe, things are a bit more grounded, as some would say. This basically means that things are gritty, and Captain America is kind of a bit of a jerk. He's a nationalist. He kinda hates on France sometimes. He will bend the rules to get the job done. He's got all the ideological traits you'd expect out of a World War II era white male, and he wasn't even the first successful candidate for the super soldier serum. Here, that honor fell on Nick Fury himself. But speaking of the serum, this version of Captain America, while also being a bit of a jerk, is actually superhuman, as opposed to being just a peak level human being like his 616 counterpart. This power boost mixed with the fact that he is very willing to cheat and bend the rules to get the job done, means he is a powerful character and should be as feared as he is respected. Maybe he isn't better in terms of morals or being a great guy, but he's what a real Captain America would probably be like in my cynical brain, and in terms of sheer strength and power, he is truly unstoppable and the best leader the Ultimates could really ask for. Number 3, Miles Morales. Miles Morales, like the Maker, is one of a few characters that came out of the Ultimate Universe that were so popular that they managed to stick around even after the destruction of that universe. Miles is the second Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, taking up the mantle after the passing of Peter Parker. He has essentially all the same abilities as Spider-Man himself, but then he has some that are wholly his own, and they're actually really kinda cool. His signature difference in terms of powers would have to be his venom. It's like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like in punches and beams and blasts or in his webbing. But Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body invisible. Miles has made his way into the 616 Earth universe and has pretty much been his own hero ever since on the Avengers and other teams, and he hasn't been stopped really at all, aka he's unstoppable. Number 2, The Thing. The longtime childhood friend of Reed Richards, Ben Grimm met up with his old friend when backpacking through the Nevada desert, like you do. This happened to coincide with Reed working on a test of a teleportation project going through the dimensional barrier into the end zone, as it's called, quote unquote. Ben wanted to see what his friend was up to, and Reed got him clearance to observe, but unfortunately, before the test started, Victor Von Doom, or Victor Von Dam as he's called here, adjusted the coordinates on the machine, causing it to malfunction and tear open a dimensional breach, sending all 5 witnesses to different locations. Ben awakened in a small village in Mexico, but also discovered that the end zone energy had increased his body mass, transforming him into a gargantuan thing with flesh made of living rock. Really weird. Now, as a member of the Fantastic Four, he found new purpose until the team broke up following Ultimatum. What sets him drastically apart from his main universe self, though, is that the Thing eventually developed a second power, to transform from his rocky appearance to one composed of purple energy, with the added benefit, on top of all of his other powers, to project energy. He also gained Sue Storm as his wife, so given all that, it's safe to say that Ultimate Ben Grimm is pretty unstoppable. And in at number 1 is Spider-Man. For a lot of people, Brian Michael Bendis' legendary Ultimate Spider-Man run that kicked off the whole Ultimate Universe in the first place is among the best of the best Spider-Man runs ever told. Peter Parker is a modern-day 15-year-old, still trying to balance his life as a teenager and a superhero. What's different from this version when compared to the regular Spider-Man is that Peter Parker's life is much more relatable and digestible for anyone born in the past 25 years. For starters, Peter isn't a photographer when he first starts at the Daily Bugle. Being a tech-savvy teenager, our hero is one of the Daily Bugle's top web designers. J. Jonah Jameson also isn't a bumbling buffoon, he's a battle-tested, competent newspaper editor that's well aware of how to handle his staff. Spider-Man's interactions with other heroes are a bit more grounded in Ultimate Spider-Man as well, as his love life being much more entertaining and realistic. Whether it's Kitty Pryde or Mary Jane Watson, Peter Parker's love life never really has a dull moment. Even Spider-Man's physical appearance makes more sense. Peter Parker has the build of a realistic, nerdy teenager, and the costume's huge bug-eyed lenses make for a perfect representation of a youthful hero. He may be stopped on multiple occasions, but the importance of this version of Spider-Man makes him pretty unstoppable in my heart. Starting off our list at number 10 is Assassin Spider-Man. In What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, we are introduced to Spider Assassin, a Spider-Man variant who is just a little bit more loose when it comes to the morals he follows. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led the Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York City in order to protect his family from the villains who would make personal strikes. Instead, Peter joined up with Wolverine, and because of their time traveling and working together, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife, meaning he does it on the regs. He's also almost always serious, not resorting to the usual quips and jokes that we are used to Peter using to cope with difficult or precarious situations anymore. His serious nature is also reflected in his costume, with a much darker look, especially with those black eyes. I really dig it. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include some more lethal means of dealing with his foes. He is an effective addition to the Spider Army when it was transformed and an extremely effective Spider-Man indeed. Number 9. The Spider. There are a lot of characters who go by the name of the Spider, including a pulp hero from way back in the day, but specifically, we are talking about a Peter Parker variant that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote coming from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker. He even claims that he has been sentenced to a total of, quote, 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes that he has committed. But of course, to make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. It's great, if not a little unnerving. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-saving Weapons X team featured in it. Being a sometimes leader of the team, as a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he was nonetheless sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44, because when you're dealing with the multiverse, there is bound to be someone stronger than you, no matter what you do and who you are. Number 8. Nightcrawler Spider-Man. Very recently, meaning this year, we have been introduced to the Sins of Sinister story arc, which is basically Mr. Sinister enacting a plan to take over the world and actually pretty much succeeding. There's a whole lot to this plan that kind of deserves its own point, but one part of his plan is using his cloning know-how to create chimeras. These essentially are spliced together versions of mutants and other heroes, so basically taking the already powerful mutant heroes and making them even more powerful by giving them a second power. There are some really cool mashups, but one of the spin-off comics from this event is X-Men Sins of Sinister Nightcrawlers. This comic features a team of spliced together Nightcrawlers who call themselves the Legion of the Night, and one of these splices puts the powers of Nightcrawler on a clone of Peter Parker. It's a blue-skinned man who can do whatever a spider can, but who can also bamf from place to place. I never knew it was something I needed, but it definitely is. Nightcrawler never gets enough love in my eyes, and he's definitely one of the coolest of the X-Men. Unfortunately, I think Marvel knows how powerful this combo would really be, so they dispose of this chimera in a pretty lame way, but in my eyes, unstoppable. Number 7. Spiderpool. Okay, I'll be honest, we have like zero information on this alternate Spider-Man. During the Spider-Verse, we were introduced to so many versions of Spider-Man that to go through each and every one in detail would have left us with no actual Spider-Verse story, and that story is dope, so no. But good golly, I wish for this one character they would have. First spotted in issue 9 of The Amazing Spider-Man from 2014 in a tiny little panel is an alternate Spider-Man wielding a katana. We see him again from the back in issue 14, and then we finally see a frontal view of this Spider-Man in issue 15 when the suspicions are confirmed. There for all to see is a Spider-Man who is also dressed with elements of the character of Deadpool. Surviving the war with the Inheritors that took the life of so many alternate versions of Spider-Man, of course he would make it through. We can assume that this guy has all the Spider-Man powers, but if he's also Deadpool, then this version of Spider-Man also has that god-level healing factor, and based on the katanas, he is just as okay with being a complete psychopath. While we have no idea about this Spiderpool's name, story, powers, or personality, we can make enough guesses to know that this guy is incredibly capable and most likely unstoppable. Number 6. Takuya Yamashiro. Instead of being Peter Parker, the Japanese Spider-Man, Spider-Man, is Takuya Yamashiro, a motocross racer and son of astrophysicist Dr. Hiroshi Yamashiro. Unlike most versions of Spider-Man, Takuya was introduced through a live-action Japanese Spider-Man TV show, and with that, his character differs quite a bit. For starters, his spider powers are a little less powerful due to the budget constraints for the show, which is a hilarious reason, but don't you dare think that this makes this guy a pushover. To make up for his less powerful spider powers, Takuya has a massive kaiju fighting mech named Leopardon, Power Ranger style with arm rockets, an absolutely giant sword, and a boomerang. He uses Leopardon and his spider abilities to fight the Iron Cross Army, which is a group of suspiciously human-looking aliens from an unnamed world who are led by, wait for it, Professor Monster. Nice. Due to his popularity and just how awesome he is, Takuya Yamashiro has become an official character in the multiverse, coming from Earth 51778, fighting against the Inheritors alongside the Spider Army, and he is set to appear in the second animated Spider-Verse movie, which I am pumped to see.
Number 5. Last Son of Earth. The Clark Kent featured in the Last Son of Earth story is very much a mirror image of the classic version of the character. In this Elseworlds tale, Jonathan Kent is a scientist on Earth who discovers that a meteor is headed for the planet. He builds a rocket and sends his newborn son out into space, where he ends up on Krypton and is discovered by Jor-El. Jor-El spends years adapting Clark to Krypton's harsh conditions and raises him as his own son. Kal-El is on an archaeology dig when he discovers a Green Lantern ring, which allows him to prevent the destruction of Krypton. He returns to Earth to see if anyone survived and discovers a post-apocalyptic society with one tribe being led out of the Daily Planet by their chief, Perry White, and an evil murderer named Lex Luthor being in charge of the other. Clark discovers that his time adapting to Krypton's atmosphere has given him superpowers while on Earth, giving him both the powers of Superman and Green Lantern. He manages to help restore the Earth, transforming it into a utopia with Krypton's technology. Number 4. Kingdom Come Superman. The Superman on Earth 22 is a bit older and wiser than the usual Superman, but he is no less powerful. He comes from a world where most of the classic heroes have retired, only to be replaced by violent and angry new heroes who have no value for human life. After Kansas is wiped out in a superhero accident, Superman comes out of retirement to help get the world back on track and to reform the Justice League. As he has gotten older, he has actually developed an immunity to kryptonite, leaving only his weakness to magic as an effective way to fight him. He was briefly transported to the main Earth, where the Justice Society kept him prisoner until they could gauge whether or not he was a threat. However, when he heard that a woman was about to jump off of a roof, he escaped custody and defeated the entire JSA in combat just to save the woman's life. Number 3. Red Sun Superman. Superman Red Sun asks the question, what if Superman didn't land in the United States, but instead landed in Soviet Russia? He is raised to be a Soviet Superman and defends the ideals that Stalin promotes. He eventually replaces Stalin and takes over the Soviet Union, using his armies and his powers to force every other country on Earth to fall in line and join the Union. The only country that doesn't join is the United States, that is being run by President Lex Luthor, who must stand up to Superman and prevent him from taking over the world. Throughout the book, we see awesome displays of power from the Man of Steel, with him being so effective that the people in his own country don't even bother wearing seatbelts anymore because they know he will save them. He fights versions of several of the heroes, such as Green Lantern, who he defeats with ease, telling him that a weapon that can create anything you can think of is useless against someone who can move faster than thought. Number 2. All-Star Superman. In All-Star Superman, the Man of Steel rescues a manned sun mission that is under attack by Lex Luthor. He stops the attack, but it turns out that Luthor's real plan is to cause him to overdose on solar radiation, giving him what is essentially a terminal disease. Superman is dying, but the extra solar radiation actually makes him stronger for the time he has left. He develops an immunity to kryptonite and becomes strong enough to lift 200 quintillion tons without breaking a sweat. It is because of these heightened powers that Superman is able to fly into the sun at the end of the story in order to prevent it from dying by building it an artificial heart to keep it alive. Number 1. Silver Age Superman. When Superman was introduced in 1938, it was considered the beginning of the golden age of superheroes. During this period, he slowly developed a lot of the powers we associate with him today. He was originally able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and this eventually morphed into flying, things like that. His stories were quite grounded and usually featured him going up against gangsters and slumlords who were taking advantage of the people of Metropolis. This all changed in the Silver Age. In the Silver Age, Superman was going up against more and more outlandish sci-fi plots, which were known for giving Superman more and more powers as the stories went on. These included kind of weird powers like super ventriloquism and hypnotism, but they also beefed up his standard powers. Superman has of course always had super strength, but in the Silver Age he was so powerful that he could tow an entire galaxy's worth of planets behind him with a big chain. One sneeze from Silver Age Superman was powerful enough to wipe out a solar system. So yeah, he was pretty powerful. He was the Superman of Earth 1, and was actually the main Superman until the continuity reboot of 1986, Crisis on Infinite Earths, where we were introduced to the New Earth Superman, who other than during the New 52 era has been our main Superman ever since. Silver Age Supes is actually too powerful and was nerfed quite a bit for the New Earth era, but he is now considered an alternate Superman and is by far the most powerful version of the character.
Coming in at number 10 is Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill, so most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Darkclaw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, this is still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. Now after this, at some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Darkclaw. Number 9. Sideburns. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little morsel of a planet teeming with scrumptious life. But while looking at her dinner, she happens to notice Wolverine, a mutant who can seemingly regenerate from anything. I mean, there's also Deadpool, but whatever. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburns, the regenerating planet. A planet-sized Wolverine that would grow back after each meal, giving the World Devourer billions and billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this, prone to drinking beer over anything else, and with predilection to being feral, would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating around through the galaxy. Number 8. House of M. Wolverine. Now to be clear, technically this version of Wolverine is just regular old 616 Wolverine, since unlike other characters in this Scarlet Witch created reality, Wolverine retains all of his old memories, which gives him a distinct advantage in this world. But outside of his story-serving memories, before he regains those memories, this Wolverine was a member of Magneto's Red Guard, which saw him have additional training as a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative, adding extra skill to a character who is hard to even scratch on a villain's best day. Also, in this reality, Logan has himself a little relationship with Mystique, unlike his alternates who seem to always be pining after Jean Grey. Is this an advantage over regular Wolverine? Depends on your taste. Number 7. Vampire Wolverine. In What If number 24, thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine is actually immune to being turned into a vampire from just a regular old bite, which allows him to be the best one suited to bring down the threat of vampires themselves. But when he finally takes down Dracula, he actually decides to have a little snack on the dead vampire, which does turn the mutant into not just a vampire, but the new Vampire King. The fact that Vampire Wolverine is a vampire means that his strength and speed are enhanced to vampiric levels. On top of that, he has an evil personality that is fueled by the character's desire to drain the blood of the living. Now couple that with his already somewhat feral personality, his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and the vampire trait of immortality, and he is very dangerous compared to the usual Wolverine. Number 6. Ultimate Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear explosion. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although it may have only been just because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30 years old, which is a little uncomfortable.
At number 10 is Brother Power the Geek from DC. Brother Power the Geek is a bizarre hero you've probably never heard of who emerged in the turbulent era of 1968. He's like a funky mix of Frankenstein and a hippie's fashion statement. Imagine a tailor's dummy being struck by lightning, brought to life, and then dressed in counterculture attire. That's pretty much brother power for you. He joined the psychedelic circus, ran for Congress, and even clashed with a biker gang, all in just 2 comic issues. But here's the kicker. In his final issue, Brother Power was shot into space, courtesy of none other than Ronald Reagan. It took him like 2 decades to return from comic limbo in Swamp Thing Annual number 5, but then he was reimagined as a failed elemental. And just like that, this quirky hero slipped back into the shadows of comic book obscurity. And number 9 is Normal Man from Renegade Press. Normal Man is a hero who never asked for his predicament. He burst onto the scene in Cerebus 56 back in 1983, a time when the comic book world was dominated by the likes of Superman and Batman. This unlikely hero is a spoof on Batman's legendary origin story. Instead of being a Kryptonian, he hails from the planet Levram, a world where everyone boasts superpowers, except for him, of course. Norm L was the odd one out, the lone powerless guy on a planet teeming with extraordinary abilities. But rather than wallow in self-pity, Normal Man embraced his role, embarking on adventures alongside characters like Captain Everything. Normal Man might not have a blockbuster movie franchise or a fancy costume, but his story is a testament to the power of embracing your uniqueness, even in a world where everyone else seems superhuman. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell, all of which are free. At number 8 is Skate Man from Pacific Comics. Skate Man is a roller derby hero with a tragic twist, one of those hidden gems in the world of comics. Created in the 80s by Neil Adams, this character's story is a roller coaster of emotions. Billy Moon, a Vietnam vet turned roller coaster derby sensation, accidentally takes out his friend Jack during a match. This tragic accident sends him down a dark path as he learns that it wasn't just a freak accident, it was orchestrated by a ruthless biker gang targeting his girlfriend. Moon's transformation into Skate Man, complete with a colorful scarf and roller skates, adds a unique layer to the superhero archetype. This one-shot wonder may not be a household name, but his gripping story and distinctive persona make him a noteworthy addition to the pantheon of lesser-known superheroes. At number 7 is Super Teens from Archie Comics. Archie Comics, the beloved home of the Riverdale's iconic gang, that actually gave birth to some truly unheard of superheroes. Ever hear of Pure Heart the Powerful? Probably not. This average high school student, aka Archie Andrews, could morph into a flying powerhouse by tapping into his pH factor. No, not chemistry, it's having a pure heart. Yet after his heroic deeds, everyone around him would have a memory wipe. Isn't that a nifty way to keep a secret identity? But the fun didn't stop with Archie. Betty turned into Super Teen, Jughead donned the title of Captain Hero, and Veronica embraced her inner vanity as Miss Vanity. And Reggie, well, he became Evil Heart. Sounds pretty ominous. Even the pint-sized little Archie joined in, forming a crew as the Super Teens. They teamed up with Archie Comics' Crusaders for a limited 2-issue series, leaving us with an uncharted world of unassuming, unstoppable heroes. At number 6 is Super Hip from DC Comics. Super Hip isn't your average superhero. I mean, we're talking about Bob Hope's nephew who, when he gets a bit cheesed off, transforms into a groovy superhero, which they call Super Hip. And he rocked the latest Carnaby Street fashion. It's like the ultimate blend of teenage rebellion and superhero shenanigans. But that's not all. Super Hip went to Benedict Arnold High School, where the teachers were inspired by classic Universal Studios monsters, talking Dracula and Frankenstein vibes right in the classroom. So the next time you're pondering who the coolest unheard of superheroes are, don't forget to give Super Hip a nod.
Number 5, X-Man. I mean, when you have the power of someone like X-Man, it's impossible for you to not be considered unstoppable. X-Man is a reality warping mutant and superhero. He's extremely powerful when it comes to telepathic abilities and telekinetic abilities. Although he isn't always operating on the side of, straight up good, with his morals sometimes getting a little wonky, I would say, like when he thought that, removing love from the world would somehow fix it. At the end of the day, he is generally trying to be a hero and do what he thinks is best. Nate Gray, as he's known, is not from the main continuity, but actually hails from the reality of Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse, and then he kind of got sucked into the main continuity. In the AOA reality, which stands for Age of Apocalypse respectively, he was created by that world's version of Mr. Sinister, known simply there as Sinister. However, Gray would escape Sinister and end up being raised by a mutant hero and one of my fave mutants in general, Forge. So, that Gray in general is going to act as a hero because he was raised by one of the best heroes, I'd say. When he did decide to take control of the world, becoming its god and shaping it into what he thought it should be, he was only threatened by basically all of mutant kind coming together to try and stop him. And even then, they failed. That was the only threat that he had, and he was like, well, dealt with that. Of course, while this all sounds kinda evil, becoming basically a tyrant and kinda conquering the world, this was actually done by Nate to fix the world, so it's not as bad as it sounds, really. He was like, look, I'm gonna die soon, and I feel like if I'm gonna die, I need to fix everything. So here I go, I'm gonna try to fix it. And then people were like, yeah, we don't really like when you try to just fix things, Nate. And he was like, okay, well, fair enough, fair enough. Number 4, Deadpool. Deadpool is so unstoppable, it's annoying. He has actively destroyed the Marvel universe before, killing everyone in it. He was so determined to escape a world that he no longer believed was real. Deadpool is also an immortal being thanks to his healing factor, and for a while thanks to the curse that Thanos put on him. Yeah, that's a true story. Deadpool was getting a little too cozy with death, and Thanos did not like that. That's because Thanos has always had a thing for Mistress Death, and is always trying to win her favor so that they can one day be together. Maybe one day. Thanos has an unhealthy obsession with death, I would say. So Thanos, when his potential future relationship status was threatened, decided to curse Deadpool so that he couldn't die, thereby preventing him ending up with death and keeping the two of them apart. Deadpool for a while was human, and it was during this time that Wade Wilson became a lot more squishy, and I suppose stoppable. But even then, he didn't end up dying, but instead would be reverted back to getting his powers, going from handsome mortal Wade Wilson back to kinda ugly, unkillable Wade Wilson. Oh my gosh. When are we getting the Immortal Deadpool book, I wonder? That could be a whole book. Someone write that. Immortal Deadpool. Number 3, Magneto. I mean, Magneto literally kept himself alive through sheer willpower and massive control of his powers. I think that means he deserves his spot on this list. And for those who might think, yeah, but is Magneto a hero, Amanda? I would say that you could argue for him being on either side, really, hero and villain. Magneto throughout most of modern comics has been villain and hero, but he also kept his blood pumping without a heart to face off against Uranos, which was a heroic feat. So even if you perhaps disagree with my categorization of him on this list, I think you at least have to give him some hero props for doing that, and perhaps at least, you know, I would say a good amount of hero points. Hero points that Magneto has truthfully been racking up over the years, especially recently in the comics. After initially facing Uranos, Magneto was left for dead, which was a mistake on Uranos' part to assume this during the AXE Judgment Day event. As we've learned from Zombieland, you always gotta double tap, aka confirm that kill. It is important, especially if you're facing off against Magneto. Uranos did not follow this rule, assuming Magneto was dead after he took his heart, and as a result, Magneto came back to finish him. Magneto basically used his powers to keep his blood moving throughout his body by controlling the small bits of iron in his bloodstream to basically keep it pumping without having an actual organ to do it for him. Literally heartless Magneto, which sounds terrifying. Later, using all his strength and a power boost from Storm, Magneto was able to defeat the Eternal Villain before he passed away. But I'm sure he'll be back eventually because he is Magneto and he's a pretty great character, so. Number 2, Wolverine. I would say Wolverine is probably one of the most unstoppable heroes that we have over at Marvel Comics. He is a master tracker and is determined when it comes to defeating whoever stands in his way, or when it comes to saving the day. And even when he ends up being brainwashed and used as a weapon, he ends up not letting that stop him, at least not in the main continuity. Although in some of those alternate worlds, he definitely has been brainwashed to the point that he had to be put down. And by Kitty Pryde, no less, in one of them. Ugh, that hurts my heart. That being said, even in alternate worlds where he has become like Lord of the Vampires, he was able and willing to rise up to defeat his fellow evil brethren, even though he knew it would also mean his own death as well, potentially. That's how determined Wolverine is. He's also virtually unkillable. Well, I guess unless you drown him. But even then, Wolverine has fallen into oceans and washed up miles off on another shore unscathed, so for a man that can still be drowned, I mean, he does pretty well to make it out alive of those underwater situations. Number 1, Hulk. I mean, we can't do a list like this and not talk about Hulk, am I right? The Hulk is not just a powerful hero, but he's also a stubborn and determined one. We've seen this shine through not just in his Hulk persona, but also as Bruce Banner before as well, but especially as the Hulk. Let's turn to World War Hulk as an example. In this story, Hulk was shot off planet by the Illuminati and ended up in Sakaar. He not only rose above being a gladiator, helping to lead a rebellion and an uprising, uprising, but after Sakaar was destroyed from a ship exploding, Hulk was determined to get back at those who had sent him there in the first place, and then later seemingly ruined his happiness, even though that isn't quite what happened, but that's what the Hulk thought happened, and that's all that really matters. He returns to Earth to get revenge on the Illuminati, and he proves just how deadly he can be. It also goes to show us why you really do not want to make the Hulk angry, because he might just squash you like a bug. He threatens the lives of some of the greatest heroes. When it comes to confronting even Professor X, Hulk manages to take on the mutants who come to his aid, and single-handedly does so, not being defeated by a physical show of power, but instead kinda by a speech about how the mutants, don't really deserve his ire. When it comes to Bruce Banner, we've seen his unstoppable nature as is showcased in the recent Hulk series by Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley, where Bruce turns Hulk's body into his own spaceship, and his mind into the ship's engine, with Bruce remaining in control at the helm, which is pretty crazy. Also, Bruce kinda took on Thor in a fight at one point and was like, look, I might be Bruce Banner, but give me all the information about how the Hulk fights. I'm a smart guy and I can use that knowledge to basically face off with the Hulk.
Kicking off our list at number 10 is Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as we know her, is known for her ability to phase herself and others through solid matter. She also has the ability on Earth 1610, but in this universe she discovered she can also minimize the negative space around her atoms, becoming super dense and granting herself extra dimensional mass, giving her enough strength to smash through concrete and metal and punch Spider-Man through the air, making her as hard as a diamond and able to withstand attacks from the Phoenix, and even make herself weigh 90 tons at peak mass. But that's as well as her phasing ability, which can allow her to walk on air and water. And that's before her exposure to Giant Man serum to fight Galactus that leveled her up even more, allowing her to increase in her size and gain a healing factor. Definitely one of my favorite Ultimate X-Men, and not just because of her romance with Peter Parker, it's because she's unstoppable. And at number 9, Wolverine. Okay, so for the character of Wolverine in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, he doesn't really measure up to his 616 Earth counterpart in a few ways, but despite that, it is hard not to admit that he's still quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his Prime version and is called a survival factor. It essentially means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear bomb. This version can also detect lies and still has his adamantium skeleton. The only issue is that in this universe the adamantium is not as strong and durable as normal Wolverine. Wolverine was also actually the first real mutant in the world, with the chemical that activated his X gene being taken, synthesized, and causing the emergence of other mutants. Logan himself was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have just also been because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey. He does meet a sticky end at the hands of Magneto, but up until that point, he is pretty nigh unstoppable. Number 8. Thor. Thor in the Ultimate Universe just kicks off to a really great start. Thorleif Goldman is given to us as a man whose sanity is completely in question. The European government has been trying to create their own super soldier program, but instead of creating a serum, they opted to create a harness and a belt that would augment someone's strength and speed and invulnerability, plus eventually a hammer that lets its user manipulate the weather. Thorleif here was chosen as the best subject to test out the new tech, only he started to believe that he was actually the god of thunder, Thor, reborn in a human body. It's such a cool way to see this character interpreted, but it also makes it so much more satisfying when he eventually proves himself to be completely sane. Using the human technology and his thousands of years of experience as Thor, he becomes a celebrity and a hero. Some refer to him as a Boy Scout, always aiming for the betterment of humanity, and refusing to throw in with the industrial complex of Nick Fury's Ultimates. It took the US president doubling the foreign aid budget in order for Thor to finally agree to join the Ultimates, and he did so in spectacular fashion, bringing the team's fight with the Hulk to a decisive end. He then carries on as one of the strongest members of the Ultimates and redeems himself as a true god among men. Number 7. Rick Jones. In the regular 616 universe, Rick Jones is actually around quite a bit for just a regular dude. For example, he was the teenager who was just hanging out at the Gamma Bomb test site, and saving him was the whole reason that Bruce Banner was doused in gamma radiation and became the Hulk in the first place. Rick was also the alter ego of Mar-Vell of the Kree, smacking together his negabands in order to transform into the hero. He also eventually became another gamma mutate named A-Bomb, but In the Ultimate Universe, Rick's story didn't really start until around the time of Ultimatum. He doesn't have much of an explained history. Instead, not too long before Ultimatum happened, he was chosen by the Watcher to become the hero known as Nova and eventually Captain Marvel. With that, he gained some pretty insanely powerful powers, teleporting himself and others across galactic distances and even into other dimensions, self-sustained flight both on the planet and throughout space, projecting powerful blasts of energy, powerful enough to harm Galactus, and a form of cosmic awareness. He also doesn't have to deal with the multiple personality issues of his 616 self, which probably adds to his unstoppable nature in the Ultimate Universe. Coming in at number 6 is Iron Man. The Tony Stark of the Ultimate Universe is pretty similar to his main Earth counterpart, only he's quite a bit more fun, less upsetting, and he eventually finds himself infused with a power that allowed him to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. And that's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man and part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable. Proven when the Master seemingly brought his end, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities plus force fields and cloaking, but he's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse bombs, and interact with all forms of tech. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man is one of the most powerful versions of the character in the multiverse. Number 5. Death Mask Deadpool. When Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, comes up with a revolutionary new method for dealing with cancer, he removes a tumor from Wade Wilson's head. What I think no one expected was that removing this tumor had the side effect of making Wade's insanity completely disappear. Deadpool suddenly becomes hyper intelligent, and his insanity instead turns him into becoming a super criminal with a super criminal empire. Now going by Death Wish and looking a hell of a lot like Dr. Doom, Wade basically is Dr. Doom, taking his place as King of Latveria and wearing a super sweet death mask armor. He plans to attack the alternate Earth 616 Deadpool, but when he's defeated, he goes and makes a deal with Mephisto to unleash a literal hell on his Earth. Number 4. Captain Universe Pool. In the comic Deadpool v Thanos, in the Patchwork Battle World, Thanos and Deadpool team up to look for Lady Death. Turns out that the entity had been kidnapped by a rival cosmic force, Eternity. And it turns out that Eternity is pretty peeved about being ridiculed and separated by the Infinity Gems, and Galactus' hunger, and the Annihilation Wave, and Death's Embrace. I don't know. The In-Betweener comes in to talk some sense into Eternity, but meanwhile, Deadpool sees an opportunity and tries freeing Mistress Death, which didn't go so smoothly, and a fight breaks out. Thanos betrays Deadpool and starts to completely pummel Eternity, a cosmic entity, which makes no sense to me. Deadpool attacks Thanos, who simply throws the Merc with the mouth into Eternity. Now this is where it starts to get wacky, apparently. Inside the cosmic being, Wade meets the Unipower, who bestows that power onto Wade, and boom, enter Captain Universe Deadpool. With his newfound power, he was able to go blow for blow with a death-powered Thanos. Deadpool doesn't technically win, but Death is able to see the error of her ways, and she takes back her power from Thanos, causing Grimace to explode. Nice. Number 3. Ladypool. Wanda Wilson is the Deadpool of Earth 3010. But since she is one of a very few female Deadpools, she naturally is titled Ladypool. Lady Deadpool joined the side of a group of rebels fighting against loyalists in the United States in her own universe, that were led by Ladypool's nemesis, General America. Yes, that's Captain America, but a general. According to Wanda, the fight started when fascists in the federal government started to impose their will on the people. As a result, a schism in Congress occurred, generals took sides, and states declared independence, which led to the current predicament. Eventually, she is assisted by 616 Deadpool, and she ends up becoming a main part of the good Deadpool Corps, and eventually she becomes the leader of that group, sacrificing herself and the Corps' ship in a fight against the evil Deadpool Corps and Galactus Pool. Number 2. Ultimate Deadpool. The Ultimate Universe has a lot of fresh takes on 616 heroes, but Deadpool got some rather unique changes that I'm not sure how I feel about, honestly. It's giving me strong X-Men Origins Wolverine vibes, which came out 3 years after this comic, so I'm not saying this comic inspired whatever they did to Deadpool in that movie, but I can't say that it didn't. Just saying, pointing that out. The Ultimate Marvel version of Deadpool was a sergeant in the military named Wade Wilson. He's grim, he's angry, he's way too serious, and he's also an incredibly racist mutant hater. Oh, he was also a cyborg cyborg with incredible strength, retained his signature healing factor, and instead of just being disfigured, he had no skin at all and is missing parts of his skull. So his head instead is encased in a clear plastic helmet for everyone to see. Yay! Deadpool leads the Reavers, who are also pretty horrible in trying to take out prominent mutants, but on live television, like it was for sport or something. Thankfully, Ultimate Deadpool was taken off of the board by 616 Deadpool, and Deadpool kills Deadpool in 2013. Deadpool. Number 1. Dreadpool. In the Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe storyline, Deathpool murders every single superhero there is in his quest to end all of creation. Deathpool even rises against the divine powers that created the Marvel Universe, meaning the literal writers, and he won. We're introduced to this character being dragged to Psycho Man by the X-Men in an attempt to cure Wade of his insanity. Psycho Man's procedure silenced all the voices in Deadpool's head, but brought out a new one, the Ultimate Murderer. This voice is aware of himself being a fictional character and is adamantly convinced that his only salvation is to kill everything there is. Dreadpool went on a complete killing spree, ending the lives of the X-Men, the Avengers, Dr. Doom, Taskmaster, Thanos, and Galactus, but he didn't stop there. The Ultimate Murderer persona had gone so far that he decided to eradicate other versions of himself, namely the 616 Deadpool. Dreadpool and Deadpool each made their own Deadpool cores, assembled from alternate Deadpools throughout the multiverse, and they went head to head. But you can read that for yourself.
Number 10. Secret Identity Superman. In Secret Identity, Superman, as we know him, is a fictional character. We are introduced to a young boy named Clark Kent, who is named after the character by his parents. One night, he discovers that for reasons unknown, he actually has the powers of Superman, and he decides to become a real-life Superman. The book follows his career from child to old man as he tries to navigate the pressures of being a superhero and leading a normal life. He has all of Superman's powers, but as he isn't Kryptonian, he has several advantages. 1. Kryptonite doesn't exist, so he has no weakness that can instantly bring him to his knees. And 2, he's the only superpowered being on the planet, which means there is no one who can even hope to stand up to him. Luckily, like the fictional Clark Kent, he's a pretty chill dude, and he doesn't use his powers to take over the world or anything like that. Number 9. Calvin Ellis. When the Kal-El of Earth-23 was sent to Earth from Krypton by his parents, he was discovered by the Ellis family, who raised him as their own. Calvin Ellis grew up to be Superman, champion of justice and the oppressed, and he has all the powers of the classic Superman. However, what sets him apart is that he actually grew up to be President of the United States, making him the most powerful man on Earth both when he is Superman and when he is in his secret identity. Number 8. Bruce Wayne Superman. In this universe, Kal-El's rocket was not found by the Kent family, but by Thomas and Martha Wayne. They had no children of their own, so they adopted the child and named him Bruce Wayne. Bruce grew up being raised by the couple at Wayne Manor with the help of Alfred the butler. One night, when they were walking home from a movie, they were mugged by Joe Chill, who shot and killed Thomas and Martha. He tried to shoot Bruce, but he discovered that he was bulletproof, and Bruce promptly incinerated Joe Chill with his heat vision. He grew up having repressed the memory of his powers until one night the manor was infiltrated by robbers, causing him to rediscover his powers. Alfred took him down to the cave under the manor and showed him the rocket he came to Earth in, and Bruce became the vigilante Batman. He has all of the powers of Superman and all of the ruthlessness of Batman, making him someone who criminals should fear more than anything. He operated as Batman until a Jokerized Lex Luthor attacked Gotham with a militia, which Batman single-handedly stopped with no casualties. After this, he abandoned the Batman persona and at the urging of Lois Lane, became a less scary superhero, Superman. Number 7. Injustice Superman. In the world featured in the Injustice games and comics, Superman was brainwashed by the Joker into destroying Metropolis as well as Lois Lane and his unborn child. This caused Superman to snap, and he brutally killed the Joker. He decided to punish all the criminals and reshape the world in his image, becoming more unhinged and violent the more power he seized. He has all the standard powers of Superman, but unlike his main Earth counterpart, he doesn't hold back and won't hesitate to kill anyone who stands in the way of his new world order. Luckily, the Batman of this universe was able to synthesize kryptonite and make pills that help his insurgency become strong enough to take on the villains and former heroes that Superman has recruited into his cause. But Superman is still so unstoppable that the only person capable of defeating him was a Superman pulled from an alternate dimension. Number 6. Superboy Prime. This version of Kal-El was sent to Earth in a universe where Superman was already a fictional character. He didn't have any powers until a cosmic vortex opened up, transporting the Earth 1 Superman to his universe. This caused Superboy's powers to manifest, and he left to help Superman in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. When all of the Earths were destroyed, he escaped to the antimatter universe. He became so mad at having lost his home that he shattered reality with a punch. He became a twisted and cruel version of the Man of Steel, as he did anything it took to try and get home. As his version of Krypton was swallowed by its sun, there is no kryptonite in his universe, and he has been shown to be immune to any that he comes across. He is also immune to magic, unlike the usual Superman. His only weakness is that he is much more dependent on solar energy to maintain his power level, and has to wear solar armor that keeps him fully charged.
And at number 5 is Hulk Spider-Man. I don't have any problem constantly re-talking about this version of Spider-Man and the Hulk because it's freaking cool. Appearing in the Immortal Hulk with Great Powers story, Peter Parker is granted the alter ego of the Hulk after Loki magically transfers the ability to him, taking it away from Bruce Banner. All the proportional spider powers mixed with the unstoppable force that is the green monstrosity of the Hulk. It's actually really cool. If not a little silly to see the Hulk wearing a torn spider suit. And there are tons of hilarious moments in this story, like Spider-Hulk getting annoyed at the stupid sticky wall, which is just his wall crawling powers. Like, come on. Banner calls in the Fantastic Four with the hope of being able to fix the situation, and I personally wish they just left it so we could still have Spider-Hulk. But alas, the power of the Hulk is switched back to Banner with the help of the Fantastic Four and Banner's own genius. It's a short little story that seems almost self-contained, as if it is indeed an alternate universe story, but it's an insanely cool one, and a Spider-Hulk would be an incredibly powerful character if he were to show up again and learn how to overcome the rage thing. Number 4. Ghost Spider. Spider-Gwen, or as she has come to be known, Ghost Spider, is the Gwen Stacy from the alternate reality of Earth 65. In this reality, it is Gwen Stacy, not Peter Parker, who is bitten by a genetically engineered super spider. This bite granted her superhuman strength, speed, toughened flesh, and pretty much all the spider-based powers that the regular Spider-Man would possess. Plus, in my opinion, she has the best looking spider suit. After Gwen is depowered by Cindy Moon during her self-titled comic, Ghost Spider bonds with the Venom symbiote, and successfully too. Gwen has actually learned to find a very healthy balance with her symbiote. The symbiote itself enhances whatever emotions the host has, right? So, when she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a corrupt Matt Murdock, Kingpin, who she was forced to team up with, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge against the Rhino for attacking her father, and eventually against Murdock himself. But over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to control and find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom actually helped Gwen to become a better hero. She is another fan-favorite alternate spider hero, and as such has featured in tons of stories. But if you're looking for something to read where Ghost Spider is featured, I suggest Edge of Spider-Verse, where she first appeared, and her own self-titled comic series Spider-Gwen Volume 1 from 2015. Number 3. Spider-Ham. Hailing from a universe where all the Marvel characters are replaced with anthropomorphic cartoon character animal versions of themselves, Peter Porker, yes that is his real name, is Spider-Ham, a pig. Now Peter Porker was actually born a spider named Peter, and he lived in the basement lab of May Porker, a scientist who had created, quote, the world's first atomic-powered hairdryer. Using this atomic hairdryer, May accidentally irradiated herself, and in a weird fit of rage I guess, she bit Peter the spider, which made him turn into an anthropomorphic pig, just like her, only with the relative powers of a spider. In his premiere issue, he would go on to do battle with Hulk Bunny, created when Bruce Bunny was trapped in an arcade cabinet and bombarded with gamma radiation, and I wish I was making that all up, but it really happened. Spider-Ham has most of the same abilities as 616 Spider-Man, only he has this rather unique ability called Spider Nonsense, which basically allows him to be more and more cartoony the more danger he is in, which is the perfect reason to have the wackiest nonsense happen that will save this piggy's hide in some of the most imaginative ways possible. Cartoon powers are incredibly powerful, bordering on reality warping, so this is a pretty unstoppable little piggy. Number 2. Miles Morales. Born to an African-American father and a Puerto Rican mother, Miles Morales of the 1610 universe was bitten by the Oz-enhanced spider that caused him to pass out and foam at the mouth. When he awoke, he discovered he had powers. Cool! He would go on to become the next Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, and people love him. Miles Morales is an incredible character. He has almost all of the regular Spider abilities, plus some amazing powers unique to himself. Namely, his Venom, which is like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like punches and beams and blasts, as well as at long range using his webbing, and that ain't all. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body, and even his clothes and costume somehow, go invisible. And apparently, he is immortal, as a side effect of the Oz formula that contributed to his abilities. Also, similar to Ghost Spider Gwen Stacy, who Miles may have a bit of a romance with in this universe, Miles' suit is just dope as hell. And finally, in at number 1 is May Parker. Earth X. It's a world where basically every single person has powers, things have gone apocalyptic, and where the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker, is Venom. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, she does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced genetic and honed spider sense. She was eventually under the control of this kid going by the name of the Red Skull, and thanks to her father and other Earth X classic heroes, she was saved. This Spider-Woman / Venom hybrid and her father Spider-Man go on to join a super-powered police force and fight crime and supervillainy threats together. Nice. She eventually, after the death itself, gets recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers as well, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy, and 'tis believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this. She's definitely one of the cooler incarnations of both Spider-Man and Venom to grace the pages of comics. Number 5, Days of Future Past. Wolverine in the Days of Future Past storyline comes from a future world that has become apocalyptic because of the Sentinels, which basically eradicated mutants by the thousands and ended up enslaving the planet, both mutant and humankind alike. Now Wolverine, who in this future is older and by extension more experienced, is a more powerful version of his 616 counterpart. He still has all the powers of the regular Wolverine, but he just works a lot smarter. Unfortunately, he still ends up passing when a Sentinel destroys him, leaving only his adamantium skeleton behind. But thanks to comics being comics, this version is revived and appears again much later on in Earth X, standing in for this Earth's Wolverine, who had finally married and settled down with Jean Grey, which I think makes him more powerful, but he also really settled, grew a rather large gut, and seems to have completely distanced himself from his former self. Jean also abandons her former life and is now an out-of-shape housewife chasing after their kids and resenting her choice to marry Logan. So yes, Days of Future Past Logan was needed here for sure. Number 4, Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say that's incredibly impressive. Like, damn. Impressive or not, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him, but we need a story, so that can't fly. Eventually, being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull, and returns home, the Hulk gang has decimated his family. This is when he finally pops his claws for the first time since the story began, and ooh, it's satisfying. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well. So cool. Number 3, Weapon Omega. After the Mutant Legion went back in time and accidentally took the life of his pops, Xavier, Apocalypse came out of hibernation 10 years too early and took over control of the United States. Enter the Age of Apocalypse storyline. The Logan of Age of Apocalypse is extremely ferocious and he goes by the name Weapon X. He has only one hand after having it blasted off by Cyclops, but his claws still pop through the nub, which is kind of alarming. He and Jean Grey set off apart from the X-Men to save mutants and stop Apocalypse, but Weapon X eventually becomes the new Apocalypse, gaining his celestial and mutant powers to try and stop aliens from destroying the population of Earth. Yes, it's nuts, but I suggest you check out this story because it's super cool. Number 2, General James James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Xaviers across many dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt but still Canadian. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer and want to get smarmy in the comments. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Herc gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god on mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banished the pair to Tartarus, where they fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for like 4 years. His penchant for big booms and affinity for political service make him a fun take on this character, and the beard? Oh, it's classic. And in at number 1 is Phoenix Logan. The Phoenix Force embodies life in the Marvel Universe. It is incredibly powerful, and when it chooses a host, that being becomes a force to be reckoned with, which is funny how it always seems to happen to characters who are already pretty damn unstoppable by themselves. Old Man Phoenix is an alternate reality version of Wolverine from Earth 14112, which features a story that is actually revolved around Old King Thor. Now, Wolverine's past resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, but it's a little different, because after Loki destroyed everyone on Earth, including Wolverine, the Phoenix Force chose Wolverine as its avatar, resurrected him, and granted him its powers. So what we have here is Wolverine's regenerative healing factor, retractable adamantium claws, and enhanced senses combined with the Phoenix's psionic powers, cosmic pyrokinesis, and flight. These factors come together to make him one of the most powerful entities in his universe, even more powerful than Old King Thor himself.